There we go. Okay, well, Jessica, thanks for being here. I'm actually quite excited, as I told you in my first contact in our email and our message. I said, well, basically, I've been hearing your conversations, the interviews that you've given. I had a chance of seeing some of your work at the Iwasu conference while we were in the same group, so to speak. So I heard quite a lot of what you were doing, and also, of course, the paper that you wrote, you co-authored with Peter McCullough. Which I was shocked to see was just taken down without any sort of notice. So I have seen your work, and I'm very excited to have you here. I'm sure that our audience would also be very, very excited once they see this. So thanks for accepting the invitation. And I just wanted to give you a chance of first introducing yourself, telling us a little bit about what it is that you studied, your areas of expertise, where you studied, and what you do now, if you're comfortable with that. Okay, so yeah.
Sure. Yeah, thanks for having me, of course. This seems to be my life now. So yeah, I started my academic career in applied mathematics in Newfoundland, Canada, and the application of the mathematics turned into an immunology degree where I did an interdisciplinary degree program where I investigated HIV immunopathogenesis using mathematical modeling. And so I was a real lucky ducky because I got to work in the level 3 lab and play with HIV, and also I got to do the mathematical modeling part. So my life was split into 2 places. It was incredible. And during that time, I met someone who was very important in the field of mathematical modeling of HIV specifically. And as life would have it, this person invited me to do a PhD in his lab. And it was meant to be on the subject of HIV as well, more kinetic analysis. Same thing though, ordinary differential equation modeling. But it turned into a project to find out, to try and identify patterns within a large clinical data set, testing an oral analog of ganciclovir against cytomegalovirus. So that was okay. That was fun. And then I shifted gears a little bit to study a bacteria called rickettsia in ticks. And that was that's where I learned most of my molecular biology skills. That was really fun. And then I did a project in another lab where I stayed with the bacteria, but I only used the bacteria to study something called ABC transporter mechanisms. So this was in protein biology, and that's where I learned a lot of my biochemistry. That was years ago. I don't remember anything. And now I'm pretty much a full-time, taking it as it comes, data analyst, I suppose. For all intents and purposes, I became very interested in the vaccine adverse event reporting system data set, which is a large data set of the United States,
yep,
owned by the CDC and the FDA and HHS. And yeah, that was a fluke because I just wanted to teach myself how to use our statistical programming language. And so I took this VAERS data, which is easily accessible to for anyone to download, as a way to improve and test my skills. So yeah, and then all of a sudden I was finding some really interesting things that bothered me. Patterns. I mean, for those of you who don't know, VAERS is a pharmacovigilance tool which is designed to detect safety signals from the data that weren't detected in pre-market testing like clinical trials. So a lot of these signals they're very big, and they're very red signals all over the place. So it's been quite interesting that there are a handful of citizen scientists and data analysts who are like, hello, something's not right in VAERS. How come we're not doing what we've always done, which is do a causality assessment because the safety signals in VAERS are really loud. But the people who own the data are not doing that. So that's a summary of the last 3 years of my life.
Wow. Okay. So for you, so for you, the moment of realization of something's really amiss was when you analyzed that data. You would say that was the point when you realized that something was really not going according to everything that you know in terms of your academic.
The moment I knew something was amiss was almost a year before that. When they first started saying these words, zoonotic pathogen, that's when my ding ding bells went off, because of course, you know, I studied HIV. It was my meat. I mean, I really have, I know this sounds weird to people who don't study microbes and pathogens, but I really respect the ways of viruses and pathogens, because it's quite remarkable how they operate. So zoonotic pathogen is when a virus, for example, is when this virus jumps animal species. So if you have one jumping from some kind of animal to a human, that can be very dangerous because of the lack of ability to respond fast enough and with efficacy. So I was worried when I started hearing those words, because, you know, I'm trained to know what that means. And so for about 2 weeks, I think, I was checking, you know, how many people died and how far it went in the world. And, you know, I was like, maybe I should start buying tinned cans and of food. And, but then it just stopped aligning. Like, it's when these stupid mandates and the riot cop mentality started. I'm like, oh, okay, so a riot cop is going to beat me if I go for a run? Okay, that doesn't seem right.
Yeah,
I'm not sick. So you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, it just became very evident that this was about control.
yeah,
Controlling people, where they go, if they go. It wasn't about preventing, you know, transmission of a pathogen. No way.
yeah.
So it was about, I guess that was February, March, when I started that feeling, and March 20th, I think it was, they announced the pandemic. And so during that time was kind of when I started thinking about picking up R and, you know, teaching myself how to use it. And so the VAERS data started getting interesting, of course, the very first day when they started the injection rollout, which was December 17th in the US and Israel, I think. So, yeah, I mean, the reason why I chose an adverse event data collection system to play with as a data set was because I knew it was going to become interesting. So, you know, it wasn't even intuition. It was just logic. It's like, of course, the adverse events are going to go up because none of this makes sense. Why are they trying to force every single human being on the planet to get injected with this crap? Like, why is there no option even for an individual, a sovereign human being, to make a choice to just get COVID and get over it? Yeah, that doesn't make sense to me. So I don't know what's going on, but it all boils down to this theft of sovereignty issue. Doesn't work for me.
The thing is that I think for many people, it became like justified to do that, which is terrifying if you think about it, because the rhetoric that was sold is that this is a very dangerous pathogen, which it isn't. And even at the beginning, when so many people were dying, at least they were classified as dying from COVID, even then, it didn't warrant the actions that they were taking, this mass let's lock everyone down. I mean, it just didn't make sense. And as you say, from your training, you're trained to understand what it means to talk about a zoonotic pathogen. We're all trained in our areas to say, well, yes, but then this is what should be happening. This is not warranted. The widespread use of masks, which has never had an evidence of working. And I've had some people tell me really upset, well, how can you say that? Because doctors in surgery, they actually wear a mask. You say, well, yeah, but it's for a different reason. It's because you're open,
Yes.
not open.
Exactly.
And you try not to breathe your own microorganisms that are not necessarily pathogens, but that can be opportunistic. It's a completely different scenario. So it's very odd how, at least it has been for me, how professional people with the same training that I have just like suddenly accepted these differences in the narrative that we've always had, that we've always understood, and they've just said, well, yeah, that's the way we're going to do it now. And it's
What the
very
CDC
odd.
said so.
Yeah,
So,
I know. So what? That's not an argument. I know. I mean, it's very strange. And that's actually one of the things that I wanted to ask you about. I mean, you're from an academic, scientific background. You work right now in data analysis. You've been in the academia, in the academic world for some time while you were doing all this work. So you have a close knowledge of the academic work. And I would like to see what your experience and what you interpret of that, of what you see in your colleagues as to why they're doing what they're doing. I mean, I can understand if someone works for one of these organizations that are making a lot of money with this. I mean, it's just completely, it's so much money that they've been making with this. I don't think that that's the only reason why they're doing this, but this definitely is playing a part. So I can understand that if a scientist works for one of these companies, they're saying what they're saying. I'm not justifying it. I'm not saying it's right, but I can understand it. But most of the people, most of the colleagues, I suppose the same thing as in your environment, most of the scientists and medics, they don't really get something out of this. I mean, they're not on a payroll. They're not getting anything directly out of this. So what do you think is driving so many people, intelligent people, to say, I don't want to talk about this. You're an anti-vaxxer. You're a conspiracy theorist. I don't want to talk to you about it. Why? What happened there? Or have we always been like that and we just had never noticed it?
No. That's one thing I can say from my point of view with certainty. No, what the human species is experiencing right now is not precedented. Absolutely not. And I could list the reasons why, but I'm not going to. As to why, the best thing I can come up with, I'm going to sneeze 1 sec. Bless me. The best thing got goosebumps. The best thing I can come up with as an answer from watching this and listening to everyone I can and asking everyone the same question and just like trying to come to some consensus, it's fear. And I think it might actually be subconscious fear. I'm not sure this is the right way to say it, but kind of like a fight or flight, whereby most people are in flight mode, as in they're running away from facing the problem. I really, really believe in my heart that everyone in their heart knows that something is wrong. But I've been alive long enough, I think, to be able to step back and really understand that I can't possibly know what someone else has been through or feels or thinks or what they, how they base their decisions and what they base their decisions on. So it's like, on one hand, I feel like I have absolutely no right to judge anyone, even if their behavior is reprehensible and they end up kind of being like the people who were just doing their job. But the reality is, it's like, it's not productive to just say, you made it, it's not. And it's also actually like unproductive to do that, because I really believe there's still a huge subset of people who are eventually, maybe not in time, but eventually going to be able to stand up to their own fear and say, I can't do this anymore. Like, I can't do this anymore. I really hope some medical doctors are in that group too, because that part I don't get. Because those guys and girls had to swear an oath to do no harm. And that means that when your patient comes to you, if you're, if you have a practice looking for help, and they start the conversation with the doctor with the words, I'm having this, weird tick thing, and I had one of these shots yesterday. You can't just put your hand up in the air and walk away. That's malfeasance. That's negligent behavior as a human and as a doctor. So, like, that part, I don't get. That's a real contradiction right there. And man, I don't know if you're hearing that, but I hear that a lot from people looking for help. Like, that's a huge incentive right now not to get more shots or get the shot at all, because if you get damaged, and there are lots of people who are getting damaged, and it's just Russian roulette, it might be you, it might not, you're out of luck getting help for the most part.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, well, because part of the problem is that they're not trying to connect the dots. I mean, that's
well, they can't, you don't see it. It's like it's actually an impossibility at that time, in this time, to connect the dots. And
I have given that a lot of thought, Jessica, because I mean, as you say, and I share that completely, as it's very difficult to understand how medical doctors can continue recommending something that with almost all certainty, they are seeing in their own practice that it's associated with these very vast amounts of symptoms, weird things, very quick cancers that are developing, neurological systems, problems, everything. So they're seeing that. And it's very difficult for me to understand how now, after all this time has passed, they still don't want to see it. But I was thinking about it, and what I think is happening is that it's not anymore, or at least it's not the only thing that's happening, that they are afraid of being listed as a conspiracy theorist or anti-vaxxers. Not only that, it's also that most of them did get the shot. Most of them told their own families and loved ones to get the shot. So it must be very difficult to say, actually, yeah, I was wrong, because then that means that it's sort of your responsibility if you took your loved ones and told them and insisted to get vaccinated. So then it's sort of easier, even if this doesn't make much sense, but it's sort of easier to say, no, I won't see it. That's not happening. Because that just exacerbates the problem.
That might happen in spite of you.
I know.
We don't really know exactly how the brain works. You're absolutely right. But listen, if any medical doctors are actually listening to this, I have something to tell you. I know how ominous and stupid this is going to sound, but I truly believe that we're in a small window of opportunity right now to turn this around. I still believe we can. And the longer people, if you're hesitant to like, say you're one of the people who kind of knows there's something up and you just feel afraid to take responsibility, delaying that is going to, as this window closes, this door, whatever you want to call it, eventually you won't even have the opportunity to do that. And the more people that do it, the longer that window stays open, and maybe we can keep it open. I don't know if that made sense. It was a little bit philosophical, but yeah, I feel I'll reiterate something that a good friend of mine, freedom fighter, Canadian RCMP officer, Corporal Daniel Beaufort, told me one of the first times we met. I'll tell you a little bit about who he is. He actually was, he's a member of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police for many, many, many years, well over a decade. Sorry, Daniel, if it's more than that. And he actually ended up being the personal protective sniper of our Prime Minister, the current one. So his job was to protect that guy, ironically. So when all of this happened, of course, all the RCMP members were ordered to get these shots. And he's one of the people that knew right away. It's like, there's something inside all of us, and maybe we're just rebellious. And thank God for that. He's just like, he just said, no, I can't do this. And I mean, after a very like thoughtful struggle within himself, because if he said no, if he turned it down, he has a family, he loses his job. And that's exactly what happened. So in this struggle that he went through, that everybody is facing their own struggle, but his involved this beautiful, beautiful moment where, and I think it probably was a moment from how he spoke to me about it, where the second he decided that he couldn't do it, he just felt better. And maybe I'm putting my own interpretation of it from this moment on, but it seems to me that when you make that decision, maybe it's a harder path, but it seems like a truer path and a more, if I may, righteous path. And everything seems to get better because A, you're not living with hating yourself for doing something you would never have done if you weren't coerced. And B, you don't have to worry about any side effects that might have potentially harmed you. Yeah. And you can walk away from it to wherever you're going to go, because you can always get a new job, to your family and say, this is going to be hard, guys, but I'm glad I did it. Yeah. So this, it's something I've been talking about a lot lately, to encourage people to step into their own like fear sphere and just like beat on the wall of it until you're out, because the other side is literally just better stuff. It's harder stuff, but that's okay. You know, if you're not afraid of working a little bit to like make, you know, they're always spouting these ridiculous words like you have to do it for the betterment of humanity. That's bullshit. What you can do to better and empower humanity is to take care of yourself first. Because if you're not functioning properly, even, you know, either because you're crippled with fear or because you're crippled from an injection, you're not good to anyone else. I shouldn't say that. It's not precisely true. Of course, you're still good to your family and everything. But you know, I think people know what I mean by that. You're especially with the fear thing, humans in the fear state, we all know that this is the impressionable state that, well, some people say that you can fall into this mass hypnotic state. You know, you're very impressionable when you're living in a state of fear. It's bad for your health. You know, you're always on edge, anxiety, you know, blah, blah, blah. So it's not good. You're not doing anyone any good by remaining in that like state. Yeah. So scary is.
What's funny there, Jessica, is that, I mean, that has been known for a long time. And there's maybe even you've read of her. I admired her, and I say that in the past. I admired her very much. She was one of my favorite authors, Naomi Klein, Canadian. She wrote about that, the shock doctrine. And as I say, I admired the way she interpreted and explained this very well-known phenomenon in which fear will drive you to not be able to think clearly and to accept everything that they're telling you to accept. So that fear can be driven from torture, I mean, which they've done in some places, and there are many examples, historic examples of that. But it can also be done by the shock, for instance, as she poses in that book of a hurricane. So everything has changed. Your life is sort of floating in the water, and in that state, you'll accept anything they say. So charter schools or whatever. And what I found shocking was that she, who has that so clear, for instance, has been one of the many people, thinkers, that accepted all of this that we're now living without any sort of questioning. And I was just, I was impressed because I would have expected someone who has so much clarity to be able to see this for what it is. I don't know. I mean, I was just impressed.
No. You're hitting the nail on the head for me, sister, because one of the things that's really hurt my soul in this, besides all the stupid isolation, is the falling of the heroes.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a believer. I'm an old school romantic, and I believe in the hero thing. Judge me all you want, but I'm talking about like journals, like the Lancet, fallen hero, New England Journal of Medicine, fallen hero, even science, it's just to some degree, anyway. But the people, even musicians, I'm like, I'm a punk originally. You know, when I was a teenager, I was a little punk rocker, and a musician, and I still kind of am. I'm still a punk at heart, and so I'm really, really musically oriented, and so I have a local heroes, and they're the lyrics. There's one in particular that it's like he wrote about what's going on now, like he had some kind of wicked foresight, and now he's one of the advocates for this injection, and I'm like, no. Because I quoted him in one of my Substack articles, and immediately, that's why I love Substack so much, one of the readers said, "Hey, did you know this? This guy's a promoter of the injection." And I'm like, no, he's not. No. And I checked it out, and he is. And I'm like, how is that possible? Did they ever believe what they were writing and saying and shouting about? Like, what happened? What changed? Did anything change? Am I the one who's like, I don't know. It's wild how, who can explain that, right?
No, it's very difficult. And I don't think it's a question of being old school or new school. I think that the archetype of heroes is very much a part of humanity. We do have heroes, and that has been, I agree with you completely, one of the most painful parts of this whole craziness, the loss of heroes. And heroes can also be friends. I mean, there's definitely a lot of that. And you say, how can you tell me that? How can you be upset with me because I'm exposing,
making a personal choice.
Exactly. And it's not like if I'm speaking out loud, and it's the same with you, we're not talking out about, I don't know, quantum physics. Or maybe someone would say, what do you know about quantum physics? You're talking about things that you were trained in, that you know, and that you know that your colleagues know as well, but it's as if they just can't see it anymore. It's very strange. So yeah, heroes have fallen, I agree. But the bright side of this is other heroes have appeared. And although I don't think that this should be so childish, like saying, okay, we need a hero to get us out of this, because that's not really the way it's going to work. No, I mean, it has to be something of each one of us. But there have been people that have appeared that you say, you know what, we're not alone in this. They want to make us think we are, but we're not. And for instance, I'm talking to you right now, and I've been knowing about your work for months and admiring you very much. And Peter McCullough and all these people. I mean, I'm just not going to list all of them, but some have become close friends, like Roxana Bruno, which I also admire very much. She's been very vocal, got into trouble because of that. And the thing is, it's all there. There are people that are really, really trying to help. But at the same time, and that's one thing I wanted to talk to you about, was at the same time, we've had people emerge that are pulling and polarizing even more in this very complicated mess that we're in. So for instance, you and Peter McCullough and all these have been saying, look, this is what we're seeing. This is what we know. We're analyzing the data and trying to be as thorough as you can. And that doesn't mean that you can't make mistakes. We all can. But I would like to think that if you do, then you're probably going to say, you know what, I was mistaken in this, and that's it. But then you have the other people that have emerged, sort of crawling out of the woodwork, so to speak, that are saying things that are just polarizing more. And I'm a bit worried about that. Well, more than a bit. I'm quite worried about that. Because I feel that right now, society, humanity is polarized. And that's very dangerous. We have history full of examples of what has happened when we get so polarized. So we have teams. It's like if it would be football teams. So you have graphene team versus spike team, and they hate each other. And you have 5G team versus virus team, or virus team versus virus don't exist team. And I think that's really harming us, really, really harming us, to the point when sometimes I even think, well, could this not even be part of the whole plan, in which it sort of undermines the voices of those of us who are trying to say, look, this is what's happening. Up to here, I can understand it. I don't understand all this other part, but let's go step by step. So in that regard, in that polarization, I wanted to talk to you about you as a virologist, immunologist, data analyst. What is your take on this whole movement that has gained quite a lot of traction of viruses don't exist, which is sort of like a tangent that came from germ theory versus terrain theory, which I see those things completely different. I mean, the discussion of germ theory versus terrain theory for me is not a real discussion. It's understanding that both can be valid, depends on what you're talking about. But from there, it's sort of like derived into viruses don't exist, no virus. And I think that that's harming science a lot and our understanding of what's happening a lot. So I wanted to get your take on that. I mean, Jessica Rose, with your experience, what would you say to people that write to me or to you or to anyone and say, how can you be doing this? You're controlled dissidents. You must be paid for by the World Health Organization because you are using the word virus when you refer to COVID. What would you say to that?
No comment. Sorry.
That I wasn't expecting.
That was priceless. I didn't think my reaction would get that kind of yeah, no, but I'm not kidding. I mean, you know, I'm very aware of this. And I'll answer it like this. Until I'm sure about something, and I'm very this is going to sound weird, but I'm very in my lane. The reason it sounds weird is because I got a lot of lanes. But I try and stay in them. And I actually, I lose focus pretty quickly. So I've learned to, like, if something gets my attention, like the whole prion thing, the issue of prion, the spike is a potential prionogenic protein or, you know, inducer. I will do mad research and read every paper I can find on it and compile some kind of hypothesis. And I propose hypotheses. And I try and stay in that mindset no matter what. And so unless I've actually specifically gone into something, I won't really have an hypothesis to what's that word, to talk about. I can't think of the word. Here's my cat. So yeah, I mean, yeah, no comment. I haven't engaged in this, and that's actually part of it, because you bring up a fantastic issue that concerns absolutely everybody. You know, virus, non-virus debate aside, you know, are these white clots being pulled out of people, and are those amyloid fibers? What we need is solid evidence. We need exactly what you said. We need the people in specialized fields who have expertise and decades of training to do their thing. Like, and then we take all of these pieces of evidence and we prove a theory, you know, from the hypothesis. And then we say, now we know what's going on with this SARS and CoV-2 thing. And there are all these red herrings being thrown out. And the worst part about that is not being able to recognize them. Mm-hmm. It's really hard, like, to know. I'm trying to speak from like the mass, you know, perception of what's going on, because I think everyone's really confused because there's so much. It's like you said, there's this, there's this, there's this, there's this, there's this, and it's like some of the evidence is really compelling. So that's why these camps are formed, because it's just what resonates in you the most that makes you choose a camp. And that's we humans like to be in camps. We like to cluster in groups so we don't feel lonely. And that's a part of the brilliance of all the different things. And I did say red herring because I'm absolutely sure that 80% of what we are hearing every day is a red herring. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong about that, but people ask me all the time. Here's a good example. Jess, what do you think about graphene oxide? And it's exactly the same reaction to me. No comment, because I can't, because I haven't looked into it. I don't know. I know nothing about that subject matter. And that might sound surprising because it is so prevalent, but it's not what I'm doing. Like what I'm doing is trying to figure out, basically now what I'm trying to do is figure out a consensus mechanism of action of the destruction, not just from the injections, which involves this spike protein, but from this SARS entity, I'll call it, to not affect it. So yeah, it's so clear clinically, adverse event wise, that the damage is systemic, which means that I think circulation personally, and I think immunologically related, and the neurological damages that are being done are really prolific. And I think that must be the fact that the blood-brain barrier can be breached. So that's the job of everyone right now, if you ask me, what I'm trying to figure out myself. And what I said about everyone kind of like me being in my lane and everyone else like really, really powering into what they do best and bringing that to the table in the form of, a beautiful manuscript. It'll probably get censored, but you can try. Yeah, we can talk about that too. Then we can come to a real consensus as to what the hell is going on here and how the hell do we help all these people who are clearly suffering. That's the problem. Yeah. So all this other stuff is like, okay, yeah, you can argue about that, but we're wasting time, people. That's my feeling.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I was sort of dragged into this whole thing without knowing the consequences that were going to happen for doing this. So my story is sort of, as a professor at the university, I was asked to talk a bit about what was going on every Tuesdays in the television of my university to help people understand just at the beginning of this whole thing. And that forced me to be really up to date as much as possible, because it would be impossible for someone to be completely up to date with everything that's being published of COVID. I mean, it's just ridiculous, the amount of papers that are published every day. But it did force me to become very, very much aware of everything. And that's when I started saying, many things just don't make a lot of sense. So as my videos started getting censored and my colleagues stopped talking to me and things like that, then I was forced to use something that I've never used before. I don't have any sort of social networks. I don't like them at all, Facebook, nothing like that. But at least Telegram, I said, okay, well, I'll try that and I'll upload the videos there. And that's all it was going to be. And now it turned into a 52,000 plus people community, in which there are many, many people, and I write things as often as I can. I share things. I try to do it very conscientiously, obviously, because I'm aware of the responsibility that we have when we're saying things, when we're sharing things. It has to be, as you say, things that you're comfortable with, that are within your lane. And I agree completely. That happens to me too, Jess. It's sort of like this topic, so I'll try to read as much as I can and make sure I understand it before I share it. And my reaction has been very similar when people started telling me about Pablo Campra's report and graphene oxide. And I said, I don't know. That's not my area. I really don't know. My background in chemistry is not that good. I didn't even like chemistry very much. So
man, the clock used to go backwards in those chemistry classes.
Exactly. Oh. So what I have said lately is, okay, there are papers that are published way back before COVID on the effects that graphene oxide can have on different organisms. We know that, okay, that's there. We know that at least 7 independent groups from different parts of the world have used different methods and have found graphene oxide in the vaccines. Okay, that's all we can say. But we cannot even say how much is in there. So while we do not know how much of this product is contained in the vials, it doesn't make much sense to say, well, yeah, because then the adverse effects could be related to that, because such and such papers showed that in fish, graphene oxide can cause this. Because I think that then we fall into a very common, unfortunately, very common area of trying to find correlations, assign them as if they were causalities. And many of those are just similarities. And that takes us to something that also happened some months ago of the poison, the snake poison story, which I also said at the beginning, no comments. I mean, there's nothing to comment there. Because we are really falling into that so easily, because COVID and the effects of spike and the effects of our immune responses to spike are so wide ranging that pretty much anything you could find similarities with that. Pretty much anything. I mean, aspirin, an overdose of aspirin will cause some of the effects that we're seeing in adverse effects and in COVID. So then what? Are we really all just being poisoned by aspirin in the world? I mean, it doesn't make any sense to look for similarities like that. And I've tried to explain that, but some people really, really just picked up the flag of their camp, of their team. So then the moment you don't say what they want you to say, then you are controlled. And I have found that almost as hard to deal with. It's almost the same level as the rejection from my peers. It's very difficult. It's like you're caught in the crossfire because you refuse to join a camp. The only camp I'm joining is to be as honest as I possibly can with what I'm saying.
That's like, you speak so eloquently about this complex shit, pardon my language. But yeah, it's the thing.
Okay. So there we go. So sorry about this very unexpected event. Yeah, it happens. But so yeah, so I it was cut when you were saying that it was what I had commented, that you found it eloquent, and that is what you think is happening, this sort of division between the camps, and that's when I stopped hearing you. So if you can just give us a recount of what you were saying.
Yeah, basically whether by design or just spontaneity, maybe we should we got to pen a new phrase, mass camp formation. Anyway, the formation of camps and or the mass formation, whatever you want to call it, it distracts from this most important task that every single human being has right now, and that's to try and salvage this horrid mess that's been created. I mean, the whole world is messed up by this. Supply chains, they're talking about food shortages, farmers' lands being seized, buyouts, fiat currencies crashing. I mean, digitization of the human, centralized digital currencies. I mean, are you kidding me? Like this is the real nightmare on our doorstep. Yes, we have to address this massive problem of what's going on physiologically and biologically with these with this viral entity, and also with the shots. Absolutely, but it's all the same thing. So our energies have to coalesce on finding solutions on these very important fronts. And I'm not saying that it's not important within the discovery process to test out hypotheses. That's science. You have to. But we can't get distracted by what might be a red herring. So what's required is consensus, which comes from open debates and communications. Like anytime, this is my advice to anyone, anytime you even get an inkling of an ad hominem attack, just walk away from that, because that person's not ready to hear you. That's not why they're there. Engage in open debates as much as you can and talk to everyone, no matter what someone has like told you about them type thing. Decide for yourself. And like you alluded to before, there's no white knight coming here, as romantic as I am. We are our own white knights, and we have to save ourselves. I know that sounds dramatic, but it's pretty much true. You have to maintain your sovereignty, your body autonomy, because if you give that up and you allow anyone to inject anything into your body, then what the hell are you doing? Seriously, what are you doing? I'm not saying that, you know, I know that most people don't realize how true the statement, there's been no adequate safety testing done on these products. They don't realize how true that statement is. It's absolutely 100% the truth. That's verified from the data, from the clinical trials, from these biotech companies and pharma companies. And I mean, we're seeing the leaves rustling in the wind, aren't we? Clinically, it's so obvious that something's wrong with these things. And it ain't because we put it into 5.8 billion people, you know, I've written an article on this too. It's not that, it's not the quantity of shots. And there's something specifically different about these products. And I mean, this is another thing people probably don't realize, not even medical doctors. These are not conventional vaccines. It uses lipid nanoparticle technology as a platform, as a carrier of modified messenger RNA that encodes or is meant to encode the spike protein, which is cytotoxic. This is not what we've done before. And the safety testing, the third phase clinical trial testing period was 6 months. That's too short. Like we usually do this testing, this phase 1 through 4 test or 3 testing after doing animal testing. And it takes 5 to 15 years. It was less than 2 years.
Well, it was done all sort of like overlapping and
exactly. What phase 1 and 2 overlapped.
Yeah.
And there's no animal trials that preceded these human trials.
Yeah.
People, I really think there's going to be a tipping point one day when the masses actually get that just because the CDC is these you know coats with their authority say something, it doesn't mean it's true.
Yeah.
And then they'll start to realize, well, if they lied, what's the truth? And then they have to engage themselves to find out the truth. And you can find the truth by looking at the data yourself. And if you are not really oriented with the numbers, read everything you can from the people who have those skills and then form a consensus. I promise you, you're going to see what me and Peter and Robert and everyone else is seeing. We're not sponsored by Pfizer. Yeah, don't edit that and make it look like I said I'm sponsored.
Don't worry.
I know, I'm kidding.
But the thing is, for most people, and I think you just hit the nail here, it's exactly that. I mean, people looking for a white knight, and then when they suddenly realize that some things don't add up, but they don't necessarily have the background in order to analyze the data themselves, but they just realize something's not on, then it's easier for them to think, then everything I've been told is a lie, everything. So I'm going to latch on to the new belief that goes against what they've told me from the start. And I think that's why it's so easy for people to just like latch on to these ideas, which can have some basis in some of the aspects that they say, which are very interesting to investigate, to examine, to test. But it's sort of like, okay, so I stopped believing this, now I'm going to believe this, which says exactly the contrary of what you've told me, because everything else is a lie. That's sort of what has been happening. And I think it's very, very dangerous. So that's one of the aspects that's really important. And I agree with this set of vaccines. That has been another problem, that some people say, well, how can you criticize this when vaccines have been so important for helping humanity in the past, which I mean, even that is a bit debatable, but they're not the traditional vaccines. They're not, it's another product and they just can't see it. I mean, I've had sort of debates, because they're not really debates, in which people that are representing this, let's just vaccinate every man, woman and child we can, they say as an argument, look how good the polio vaccine has been, or look how good the rotavirus.
Always the bloody polio, God.
I know, it's very funny. And I just say, well,
It's
It's
polio
completely
argument.
different. It's completely different. I mean, we have 2 polio vaccines, inactivated, attenuated. One acts at the mucosal level. I mean, do you even understand immunology in order to see what you're saying? You cannot use that vaccine as evidence that these that are not the same platform based work. You cannot do that, but people do it. So I think that in the general public, Jessica, some say, well, I mean, this group of people have been criticizing vaccines and we know vaccines work, so how can they do that? And then they just stay there. And that is what we're dealing with. That in an atmosphere of polarization with people saying, what is that you mentioned the word virus, so you're also part of this. It's so complicated. It's really, I never thought I was going to be navigating these waters. I mean, it really, 2 years and a half ago, I was just trying to help people by communicating in science. That's what I was doing. And it has been complicated, as you say. It has been the fall of the heroes and even questioning what it is exactly that we're doing. I mean, for me, the part of science, it's sort of like a loss in my belief in what the scientific world was, the academic world was. That
100%.
has definitely died. Very, very painful. And I'm still dealing with it. Sometimes I get quite sad with that. But at the same time, just as I said, well, we have a chance of building something else and trying to continue.
Building better.
Yeah, well, I wasn't going to say that. But no, we're trying to go back to the basis of what science is. And I think that even most people don't even understand what science is. It's about asking questions, thinking up ways in which you can test the hypothesis that you derived from the questions, and then not saying that now you understand what's happening and that's the truth. Is now I have a response to this and it might change in the future.
Exactly.
And
I have evidence now. That's all we have. We have bits of evidence along the way.
Exactly. But when you have a world, which I mean, it's shameful to say that, but in a world in the 21st century in which one of the most important or influential people in science, whether we like it or not, said, if you question me, frankly, you question science, you know what I'm talking about. I mean, that is just...
You know, he's 82.
Well, yeah, but I mean, his age doesn't justify things. It's terrible.
Oh, no. I thought I had an interview with someone and they mentioned that and I was like, is that true? So I looked it up and he is, and I'm like, wow, he's aging well. Like, I'm not being sarcastic. I thought he was like in his late 50s. I mean, 82?
Wow.
Give that man a rocking chair and put a blanket over him and send him out to pasture. No offense. I'm not saying you can't do a good job when you're 82, but we know who we're talking about here.
No, I'm just shocked that someone can get away with saying that. I mean, saying if you question me, you question science. That for me,
Yeah,
that was
imagine if I said that.
No. Well, I don't think you said that. No.
Of course not. But imagine, like, imagine vultures that would just descend upon me if I said something that stupid. I mean, if you guys go against what I'm saying, you're going against surfing.
I know.
That's just as stupid. You know what I mean?
It is, but people fall for it, and it's just terrible. Or the fact that someone that doesn't even have a science degree, well, any degree at all, is calling the shots on health and well-being of so many people in the world. It's just, it really is crazy what we're living. And I'm very grateful, Jessica, that there are people like you that are trying to make a difference. And sometimes I'm sure you feel that same way. Sometimes it seems like what we can actually do is so small that it's almost like, well, am I really making any difference? But I think we are. I really think we are in a way. And if 10 people read of the thousands of people that read your Substack, if 10 people understand it and take it, and from there they can influence other people, I think then it's worthwhile. And if you're still up for it, I just wanted to ask you about your take on this paper that was published together with Peter McCullough and others on the adverse events that were related to cardiac adverse effects. And that was then just taken away, just removed. I mean, I've seen many papers that are removed, but usually they give a reason. And one thing is saying, okay, we're going to publish a correction. That's the easiest. When they just take them away just like that, usually it's a very serious reason and it's published. And here it just said, no, it's sort of like on hold. It's the weirdest thing. I had never seen anything like that in 25 years of doing science. So I wanted to see your take on it, how it was. You published it. Did you get an email saying we're going to remove it? Nothing.
0.00. Yeah, it's been over a year since we submitted it. And yeah, it's just nobody's heard of this happening before. That was my first reaction. Like, I'm kind of a junior scientist. Peter is not. And so he recognized right away that there was something really, really, really weird going on when we were independently informed by, you know, I don't know, followers, I suppose you can call them. He by media, me by, I don't know, one of my readers, that the words temporarily withdrawn were written beside the title. And this paper, you know, it made it to PubMed. It was immortalized. You know? It was a done deal. And then at the last minute, the publisher put this notice beside the title and withdrew the content. With a notice saying, oh, we're you know, I don't know, it said something that said maybe one day we'll put it back. And I had to write to them, and I did. I wrote 2 emails that were very polite, and simultaneously I wrote to every single person I know who, I mean, this is centuries worth of experience in the academic sphere, and not one of them said that that's normal or they've seen it before. So I was like, okay, consensus. And so I asked them to explain, you know, what happened. And also very importantly, why neither Peter nor myself were informed.
Notified, of course.
Right. So no answer until I think the next day. And then they replied and they said that they were reconsidering publishing it because it had not been an invited paper. And Peter was on the email and he wrote back immediately and said, no. Here are the examples of papers that were not invited that you published. Reinstate the paper or we're going to litigate. Didn't hear anything for about a week. And then we got the final email that said, we're not publishing your paper because it's our prerogative not to. And in their, you know, small print, it says at any time during the publication progress, they can not publish. So we didn't get a reason. There was nothing wrong with the paper. There were no complaints about content. There nothing. And we still have nothing to go on. It's in the limbo land of academic peer-reviewed literature.
But it's terrible because it's even worse what happened now than if they had said we remove it because we feel that there, I don't know, whatever technical difficulties of the paper, the methodology used, whatever.
Yeah, but I've been grilled by journalists and Retraction Watch. They asked me questions. And by the way, all of these people that came to me for clarification, I very pleasantly told them everything. And all the people on the other side were also approached, and not one of them made a comment. It's just like,
yeah.
And so yeah. I've had to explain this, or I've chosen to explain this to many people along the way. It's like, you can't, a couple of them were predators and one of them came after the content and I'm like, listen, and it was a PhD. I said, listen, if you have an actual PhD, then you've published papers in scientific journals, medical science. She has a PhD. And then you therefore understand that getting your work published is not an easy feat. Yeah. It takes a lot of effort. It takes a fantastic piece of work. Yeah. It takes the peer review process, which is grueling. Yeah. And if you've been through this, you know exactly what I'm talking about when I say my paper went through that. Me and Peter's paper went through that and got out the other side and was accepted. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with the content. And if you, not you, but this predator are making the claim about anything, about, you know, if you are denigrating the content in any way, then you are denigrating the people who reviewed this. You're denigrating the journal. you're denigrating the publisher, you're denigrating everyone involved.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I
I
don't
agree.
and I'm one of those people that absolutely refuses to get engaged in toxic waste because it's
Yeah.
really bad for your soul. So I don't know if she actually wrote her hit piece on the paper, but I hope not. Maybe I was able to reach her on some level.
Hopefully. But I mean, the reason I was saying that it's even worse than if they had actually said, well, we find that there are methodological flaws with the paper, whatever, is that, as you said, they left it in limbo. So you and Peter could not even take that paper and send it to another journal because technically it still belongs to that journal because it says it's being withheld temporarily. So it's really, really, it's a really bad situation for your paper because you cannot publish it elsewhere until this is resolved, until they actually say, no, we're not going to publish it at all. We return the rights to you because, as you know, in science,
They returned the rights to us.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah. We could have. This is all Peter's ballpark now. I don't know anything about like where to proceed from there. I mean, we could have just tried to publish it in another journal, but I mean, this is more than. It's horrible that it becomes this, but then it's more than just getting the content out there, which we can do in the form of a preprint, etc. But this is about the principle.
Yeah, of course. No, I agree. I think it denigrates science.
Of course it does. It denigrates the whole process. And I mean, just to go back to the content, I mean, this was a non-controversial paper. It was just a descriptive analysis of myocarditis cases in bears.
Yeah.
And it did in fact show something incredibly interesting, which of course is published out the yin yang now. But we did this a year ago. So imagine how many people we could have saved. It showed that there was a proclivity for young boys, especially 15 years old, for suffering myocarditis after dose 2. Like I think it was a 5 times greater rate of reporting in 15-year-old males on dose 2.
Wow.
So yeah, it was.
Yeah, no, I know, and it's very frustrating, and I feel for you for everything that it involves. I mean, I know what the publication process can do to one. I mean, and all the energy that you put into it, and it's very tiring, very tiring. So I feel for you in that regard, but it goes much beyond that. I mean, this information has to be out there. People have to know it, but it's very difficult because then you try to get a proper paper out and it's censored. So then people say, well, there are not even papers published that show that. And it's a vicious circle, very difficult to break. So I hope that this gets at some point published in another journal, Jessica. I really hope that Peter is onto that and will allow that paper to be out there.
Champion. I mean, that man has he's like the Energizer Bunny. He's so like his energy source seems to be endless. I mean, amazing medical doctor. You know, he's everything. He appears to be every single thing that I think medical doctors should be. And that's somebody who is ethical and cares first about their patients' well-being. Like Pierre Corey and Paul Merrick. I mean, these, and to all of you guys, I mean, you know how great you are, but you wouldn't say that because you're just like, well, I'm just doing my job. But it's like, yeah, but you're like 1% of medical doctors right now.
I know, which says quite a lot. I mean, because one would expect most medical doctors to be like that, but that's a whole different issue that we could probably talk about for 10 hours, no stop.
It occurs to me though that a lot of medical doctors probably become doctors to make lots of money, because you do.
Yeah, I know. It's just crazy times that we're living in, Jessica. So the last question I wanted to ask is, what is the most worrying thing for you right now in terms of COVID, of this pandemic? And I'm asking that as broadly as I can, because maybe it's not something that has to do with the virus itself or with the vaccines themselves. I don't know. For you, for Jessica Rose, what is the most worrying thing at this moment?
Digital passports.
Okay. Because of the control that that would imply?
Because of the theft of the sovereignty of the human being. And I am a human being. And I don't want to be told what to do, quite frankly. I'm always saying that I don't have any control over everything. I try to. I'm a very controlling person, which is bad. You know, that's one of my personal, you know, wars, maybe is a good word. But I know inside me that I don't control a goddamn thing. But I feel that maybe there is one thing that I control, and that's, to a degree, that's what goes in my body, certainly by injection. Now, you know, I can't necessarily control air pollution, so I can't necessarily control the shit going into my lungs from the air. And I know that, you know, even if you buy organic vegetables, that they might not really be organic. So, you know, there are levels of it, but I believe that maybe control isn't the right word. Maybe responsibility is a better word. I know for a fact that I have an enormous responsibility to honor this temple. I think the human body is like, I mean, what? You know, like you can make another person. I mean, it's crazy. It's a miraculous thing to be a human being and to be having these individual experiences. And so that's the thing that bothers me the most is this individualization coup. I don't know if that's the right word, but like the attempt of seizure of the individual, that bothers me, because human beings are special because we're individuals and we're better together, because like we were saying before, we each have our own lane and we each have our own creativities and we each have our own preciousness and skill sets. And when we combine those things, everyone wins. You know, it's like, so that part really bothers me. Yeah. What about you? I can't hear you.
Sorry, there you go. Yeah, there are many things that worry me, Jessica, many. And I agree. I think that the digital passport is terrible, and this was one way to make it stick. It was going to be very difficult to attain what they're trying to do if they hadn't let this whole fear of disease be what to call, because that in essence was the door that they opened. So we
The
could even see it
infrastructure, yeah, it's been put into place.
Yeah. So that worries me. But I think what worries me the most is how easy it has been for people to give up their sovereign rights. Because this whole passport thing and the vaccine thing, everything would not have worked had people not given up their own sovereignty. And that scares me, how easy it has been for thinking people that are smart, people that care about others, to just switch off and say, well, yeah, but this is what we have to do to not be selfish. Oh, yeah, well, they're doing it because they worry about us. And that really worries me, because if we cannot get people to get back to their own sovereignty, to their own responsibility, if we cannot allow that, if we can't find the way to help people get to that, then we're really in a bad way, Jessica. So that worries me a lot. And I try not to get all pessimistic and say there's nothing we can do. I try to just continue doing the work that I know can help others, or at least I think it can, and to establish networks with people like you, with people like Peter, with like Roxana that I've been in touch with, and just keep going at it. And maybe we won't be able to make a difference. Maybe we won't, Jessica, but at least I know that we're trying, and that should count for something. So even with all this worry that we can have with the digital passports, with what it implies, with everything that's going on, if more people, even if we're still few, but if more people sort of get on board and say, I'm going to do what I can to help this world be better, I think that we're going to be in a better place. At least I want to think so.
Well, I think if you're doing something, then you're doing everything. And I know that you made a comment about feeling, would you be quiet? My cat is freaking out.
Don't worry.
I know that there's this feeling of being small, but nobody is small. And that's a trick. That's part of the brainwashing trick, I think, to make people feel small and insignificant and not exactly who and how they should be. Every single thing that you do with integrity is more than enough.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
you have a ripple effect in ways that you have no idea about, in my opinion. Like, I'm no one, and apparently people care what I say. Okay, I'm grateful for that, because I'll never lie to you guys. I might be wrong sometimes, but I'm never gonna lie. And so, yeah, there are no insignificant people in my mind. Absolutely, that's a ridiculous thing that anyone would try to inflict on someone else as a mentality. It's a mentality. I mean, most people think that they don't matter.
Yeah,
And
I know,
that's
and it can't make a difference.
yeah, that's exactly how I think this all happens so quickly. I mean, it's brainwashing. Advertising is very powerful, and we're all very susceptible too.
Of course.
But yeah, I think reasserting your importance would end this tomorrow. If everyone just remembered, because it's not about realizing, it's remembering that they are really important and everything you do matters, then this would end.
I agree. Jessica, thank you for your time. I know that it's the weekend. We all want to sort of disconnect, but I really appreciate your time. And we'll keep in touch. As you know, we have a research project that's in the pipeline. So we'll keep in touch with that and hopefully be able to advertise this or announce this openly in not a very long time. So thank you for your time, Jessica. And again, we'll keep in touch. Okay.
Yeah, this has been lovely. I mean, I think of you as a friend now. It's been really nice to talk to you, and I feel like we'd probably get along if we were living in the same place very well. So yeah, no, thank you for the chat. It's valuable to me. Yeah.
Thanks. Thank you, and I'll send you the video, and then we'll take it from there. Okay.
I'll put it on my website.
Okay, sure. Take care, Jessica. Have a nice Sunday. Bye.
You too.